Thank you, Jim. So back in the day, Diane and I used to edit the Sierra Club's newsletter for Illinois. And that would have been in the early 1980s. And by coincidence, perhaps, that was the time in which the Sierra Club was making a big move into politics and away from organizing outings and picking up litter and restoring riverbanks and all the things that all of us who were members of the Sierra Club at the time really enjoyed doing. So Diane and I were editing this newsletter, and they kept telling us to put political stories on the front cover. And we said, why would we do that? I mean, some of us are Democrats, some are Republicans, some of us are even libertarians. Why put politics in here? And we were told in no uncertain terms, that's now the new rules. That's coming from Washington, D.C. Purpose of the newsletter is to organize political influence in the environmental debate. And so we got kicked out of the Sierra Club. So thank you very much for being here. As Jim said, my name is Joe Bast. I'm the president of the Heartland Institute. I had the privilege of helping to edit the book that I'm going to be discussing and working with some really talented guys. I'm going to briefly describe those authors to you. I'm going to prove that there is no consensus about global warming, this myth that there's a 97% consensus. I'm going to take that apart piece by piece and leave it on the floor, and you're all going to say, you're right, it's dead. There's nothing there. And then I'm going to explain why there's no consensus, why scientists disagree about global warming. And by the end of that conversation, I think you're all going to be very well equipped, as Jim Lakely said, to debate anybody on this topic. You will know more about it than virtually anyone who tries to talk to you about it. So this is the book, Why Scientists Disagree About Global Warming, the NIPSI report on scientific consensus. Jim gave you a brief description of the Heartland Institute. You might ask, why would a free market think tank get involved in the global warming issue? It's because we saw the science being hijacked by groups on the left, exactly what I saw taking place at the Sierra Club. But other think tanks like the Cato Institute, the Heritage Foundation, AEI, all these very good think tanks said, well, we don't do physical science. We do economics or political science or law. We don't do hard science. So we don't really want to get into that debate. And I felt that was a strategic error. I thought it was really important that somebody come in and confront the left on science. And that's why we got The Economist says that the Heartland Institute is the world's most prominent think tank on man-made climate change. New York Times says we're the primary American organization pushing climate change skepticism. Just earlier this year, an academic journal, the Global Environmental Change, did an article that said we are a central actor among conservative think tanks, producing or disseminating a significant portion of the documents of the corpus. Don't you love the way academics write of the corpus? In fact, we produce 39% of all the printed material that is skeptical of global warming, according to that particular report. So we've gotten some attention from the other side. This book has three authors. The first is Craig Idso, Dr. Craig Idso. He's a climatologist, one of the world's leading experts on the effects of carbon dioxide on plant and animal life. He's chairman of the Center for the Study of Carbon Dioxide and Global Change. A second author is Dr. Robert M. Carter. Dr. Carter was a world-renowned paleogeologist, an emeritus fellow with the Institute for Public Affairs, author of a really good book titled Climate Change, the Counter-Consensus. Shockingly, Dr. Carter passed away in January, massive heart attack, and we were just all shocked by it. He was right in the middle of working on the final volume of Climate Change Reconsidered when that happened, literally just a few weeks after this book was released. So we lost Bob Carter. He was a very good guy and a good friend. And the third author is Dr. Fred Singer. He is the dean of physicists around the world. For 25 years. He was professor of environmental science at the University of Virginia. Before that, he held a number of positions in the U.S. government. He was one of the original rocket scientists in the United States. He had his face on the front of Time magazine. just a tremendous guy. He founded the Non-Governmental International Panel on Climate Change, or NIPSI. One reason you may not hear more about him is because he came out against global warming alarmism. And the moment he did that, he started to get attacked, demonized, ostracized, and silenced. And so one of the world's most respected scientists, if you go to his Wikipedia page, is just full of just terrible accusations and negative stuff, leaves out his biography of hundreds and hundreds of peer-reviewed scientific articles. So Fred Singer is one of the three authors, co-authors of this thing. Fred founded NIPSI, the Non-Governmental International Panel on Climate Change, in Milan, Italy in 2003. As its name suggests, it's an international panel of non-government scientists and scholars. None of these guys are paid by the government to hold an opinion one way or another on the climate change issue. It's now a joint project of three organizations: Fred's Science and Environmental Policy Project, the Heartland Institute, and Craig Idsow's Center for the Study of Carbon Dioxide and Global Change. NIPSI has produced a series of publications so far. This is a list of them. Why Scientists Disagree About Global Warming is the most recent one. The main finding of this book can be summarized in a single sentence, and it's on the screen here. The most important fact about climate science, often overlooked, is that scientists disagree about the environmental impacts of the combustion of fossil fuels on global climate. They disagree. There's fundamental disagreement. There's extensive debate inside the scientific community and in the peer-reviewed journals that shows this uncertainty and this constant learning process. Now, the other side knows this. The people who are out there saying it's a crisis, we got to do something about it, they're aware of this. They're aware of it because it was easy for us to find it. Literally thousands of peer-reviewed articles are just shouting out that we don't know for sure what's going on with the climate. There's fundamental risks. The models don't work. We'll get into some detail on some of that. But they hide it. And they hide it because they know that if the public is told that there's still debate and uncertainty on this, public support for their agenda just evaporates. Focus group meetings show that all the time. We see the same focus group results that the other side looks at. And anytime you say, well, some scientists disagree, boom, half of the people in the room say, oh, wait a minute. You know, this isn't gospel truth. This isn't religion. So that's why they hide it. Good example, on the website of NASA, you have this sentence: multiple studies published in peer-reviewed scientific journals, footnote 1, show that 97% or more of actively publishing climate scientists agree climate warming trends over the past century are very likely due to human activities, quote unquote. Now, look at footnote number 1. What does it say? It has 4 sources. And I'm going to go through each of those 4 sources. Footnote number 1 refers to 4 studies. The first one is by a socialist historian. The next 2 are by college students. They were literally college papers. Astonishing that they would cite this as proof. And the 4th study is by a wacky Australian blogger, who I'm going to describe to you in a little bit of detail. None of these are credible sources, okay? Not even close to being credible sources. So here's the socialist historian, Naomi Oreskes, 2004, University of California, San Diego. Those of you who follow the political correctness debate, they are way out to the left. There are no Republicans on the faculty at the University of California, San Diego. When we sent a book to some of the professors there, they posted a picture of somebody trying to light the book on fire. They literally posted that on Facebook. No tolerance of anything that's to the right of Mao and some of their favorite guys. So what did she claim to find? She said that she examined 928 abstracts from scientific papers that were published from 1993 to 2003. She concluded that 75% of the abstracts, either implicitly or explicitly, supported the IPCC's views. That's the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which has only 2 C's, not 3. So there's a typo on the screen. I'm sorry about that. support that view that human activities are responsible for most of the observed warming over the previous 50 years. So what's wrong with her study? Well, first of all, get this to work. It's not peer-reviewed. You might remember NASA says published in peer-reviewed scientific journals. Well, not all articles that appear in peer-reviewed scientific journals are peer-reviewed. Peer-reviewed journals have op-ed pieces and editorials that don't go through peer review. Turns out Naomi Oreskes' piece was an op-ed piece. It's 1 page long. It was 1 page long. It wasn't peer-reviewed. So even though it appeared in a peer-reviewed journal, it's not a peer-reviewed article. She searched for global climate change instead of climate change. Now, you might think that's kind of an arcane distinction. Well, actually, it leaves out 92% of all the articles about global warming. And when you look at the larger corpus of publications, you're going to find that many more of them express doubt and uncertainty and don't point to a human impact on climate. She's not a scientist, so she misrepresented or misunderstood many of the articles that she was looking at. You got to be a scientist to know if this article actually is making the point that you think it is. Another problem, she only looks at the abstracts. 2-paragraph or 1-paragraph summary of this entire article. Now, it's interesting. There's a whole literature. I wasn't aware of this until about 2 years ago. When scientists, when any academic writes an article, he or she has to write the abstract. They write them with lots of keywords in them so that they get picked by Google Scholar and other search engines. So you put global warming into your abstract, even if your article isn't about global warming or it just mentions it in passing. So your article is about the reproduction of frogs in the tropics, okay? So you put global warming in there because, maybe global warming might affect the temperature, which might affect the frogs. And sure enough, there's a sentence in your article that says that, but that's not what your article proves. There's no implicit endorsement of the IPCC's reports when you just mention that in passing in your article. There's lots of that. So abstracts do not accurately reflect the content of the articles. Any study that claims to find consensus by counting abstracts, you got to call BS on that. It's not the case. It's not a good methodology. She never explained how many of the articles actually address whether human activity is responsible for climate change. The issue here is causation, right? They call it attribution. Can we attribute an impact on climate to human activity? How many of the studies that she looked at, that she counts up here, even ask that question? Very, very few. 90% of them assume that it's the case. Or say, if it's the case, then frog reproduction in the tropics will go down. That's what the study is about. It's about frog reproduction. It's not about whether there's a human impact on climate. And yet those studies get rolled in here to say that it implicitly endorses the IPCC's findings. She never explains how many of these articles agree with the IPCC's definition of climate change, that more than half of the warming in the 20th century was caused by human activity. That's the real definition. And she made no effort to try to distinguish articles that found some impact from those that found lots, and whether or not it actually agreed with the IPCC. Okay, so anybody who says that this is evidence that specifically supports the IPCC, they're wrong. They misunderstand what she actually found. Her findings were never replicated. I'm going to mention to you in a minute, somebody tried to replicate it, came up with entirely different results. Okay, if you can't replicate it, it's not science. A study aimed at updating the findings moving forward to a new database of more recent articles found that only 7% of recent articles actually support the alleged consensus. So dramatically different from what she found. And one reason for that is they searched for global or climate change, not global climate change. So the larger database does not show the consensus that she claims. All right, look at the second